Good morning. I'm Hunter Harris, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the 4th annual AT&T Presents Untold Stories event. We are here today to celebrate the next generation of storytellers and to award one filmmaker $1 million to make their first feature film. Untold Stories is a multi-year, multi-tier alliance between AT&T and the Tribeca Film Festival that awards funding, mentorship, and distribution to filmmakers from communities systematically underrepresented in the film industry. This unique platform has already made an impact on diversity and inclusivity in film. Its first two winners, Nigerian Prince and Lucky Grandma, were nationally distributed and are now available on multiple streaming platforms. Untold Stories' third feature, Marvelous and the Black Hole, premiered in early 2021 and will be screening at this year's Tribeca Film Festival. Let's hear more about Untold Stories from a few of our friends.
AT&T Presents Untold Stories is an amazing opportunity to pitch and potentially win $1 million to fund your first feature.
Then you meet these panelists who are incredible. They're from all different parts of the industry. They're directors and producers and actors.
She's okay with her journey and she's accepting her journey.
I would not have been able to make this film the way I did without the help of the Untold Stories initiative. We had no idea how big it could become.
Movies by people who you've never heard of need to be seen more, need to be given more respect.
It's important for different kinds of people to be able to tell their stories, and it's just great to be able to see a diversity of voices and stories out there.
I'm a much better filmmaker now that I've finally done my first feature, and I can't wait to do it again.
Today, we're doing things a little bit differently. We'll still be watching pitches of exciting new films, but the event will be a hybrid of virtual and in-person elements. This helps ensure the health and safety of all participants as filmmakers are joining from around the globe. We will hear from 5 inclusive filmmaking teams selected from hundreds of applicants who will pitch their film projects to an esteemed greenlight committee of industry professionals. Each pitch will be 10 minutes and has been pre-recorded by the filmmakers. Following the pitch, the filmmakers will answer questions in a live Q&A with the Greenlight Committee. The committee will then deliberate, and a winning team will be awarded $1 million to produce their film. The winning film is guaranteed a premiere slot at the 2022 Tribeca Film Festival, and for the first time, HBO Max will distribute the film. AT&T will provide $10,000 grants to the other 4 participants to help advance all of the finalist films. Plus, we will also be rewarding a fan favorite, an opportunity for you, the audience, to choose the untold story you most want to see on the big screen. The fan favorite film will be taking home a $50,000 grant to help them on their path to production. Click the link in the description below to vote. Voting is now open through 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The 5 finalists you'll meet today are a talented group of skilled, creative, and savvy writer-directors and producers. After a long and thorough selection process by Tribeca and AT&T, we've welcomed 5 projects that all bring to the forefront complex, timely stories with nuanced characters that are largely unseen in mainstream media. You will see a breadth of genre-bending projects, character-driven films that use humor, magic realism, and the supernatural to explore themes of identity and self-acceptance, the power of family, and the embracing of love in all forms. Each of these teams have submitted a production-ready screenplay that can be produced for $1 million and will be ready to premiere at next year's festival. Our Greenlight Committee, who will select today's winning film, is comprised of esteemed professionals with extensive backgrounds across film, TV, and distribution. First up, we have Kellen Smith-Kenny. Kellen Smith-Kenny is the Chief Marketing and Growth Officer at AT&T, where she is responsible for deepening customer relationships, accelerating growth, and elevating AT&T's premium position. Over the past several years, AT&T has launched groundbreaking programs with the NBA, WNBA, Tribeca Festival, #SeeHer, Cloud9, and more to underscore the importance of representation and to elevate underrepresented voices. Kellen is passionate about the role brands play in reflecting and promoting diversity and honored to help select this year's winner of AT&T Presents Untold Stories. Next, we have Karen Horn. Karen Horn is a senior executive with over 20 years of experience within the entertainment industry. Karen has been widely recognized as a diversity and inclusion pioneer and is currently the Senior Vice President of Equity and Inclusion at Warner Media, leading the creative talent development pipeline programs across HBO, HBO Max, Warner Brothers Film and Television, the Turner Networks, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, CNN, DC Comics, and Warner Media's gaming divisions. We also have Veena Sood. Veena Sood is a critically acclaimed writer, director, and producer. Veena created the TV program The Killing, which was nominated for 6 Emmys. Her recent Emmy Award-winning TV series, 7 Seconds, is available on Netflix, and her feature film, The Lie, premiered on Amazon in 2020. We also have Nisha Ganatra. Award-winning writer, producer, and director Nisha Ganatra is celebrated for her work on television shows like Highland, Better Things, and You, Me, Her. She also created Code Academy and has directed episodes of Girls, Dear White People, Future Man, Mr. Robot, Shameless, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and countless more. Her acclaimed debut indie feature film, Chutney Popcorn, which she wrote, produced, and directed, won audience awards at the Berlin Film Festival, Outfest Los Angeles, Ojai Film Festival, and many more. Her film Late Night, starring Emma Thompson and Mindy Kaling, premiered at Sundance and garnered the highest streaming numbers of the year. Ganatra is a Golden Globe winner and Emmy nominee for her work as director and producer for Transparent. She has recently directed The High Note for working title and focus features, starring Tracy Ellis Ross, Ice Cube, June Diane Raphael, Dakota Johnson, and Kelvin Harrison Jr. And last, but certainly not least, we have Trace Lysette. Trace Lysette is an actress and advocate best known for her recurring role as Shay on Amazon's critically acclaimed series Transparent. Trace can be seen in recurring roles on Star's Blunt Talk, FX's Pose, and in the film Hustlers. She will next be seen in Venus as a Boy, which is premiering at this Tribeca Film Festival. Our Greenlight Committee was provided with 5 film scripts a few weeks ago, but today's pitches will feature the writer, director, and a producer, and each project presenting their vision through their own words. Following this live stream, our Greenlight Committee will deliberate off camera to choose the $1 million recipient. The chosen filmmaker and the fan favorite will be announced later today at 1 p.m. here on this live stream, so be sure to tune in. It is now my honor to introduce the 5 projects and filmmakers. Let's begin with our first film, Leche. Leche is the story of Nina, a 9-year-old Dominican girl with albinism who is still grieving the death of her abuela when she moves to the States to live with her estranged mother. In a misguided attempt to cope and assimilate, Nina manifests the voodoo spirits from her abuela's altar and discovers they're more than she bargained for when death begins to follow her. Let's hear more from the filmmakers.
Welcome to the world of Leche. I am the film's writer and director, Gabriela Moses, and that was the moment in our film where our protagonist, played by the wonderful Penelope Casado, meets death himself for the first time. Leche is part magical realism, part thriller, wrapped in a tender coming-of-age drama about grief and loss. In it, 9-year-old Nina, a Dominican girl with albinism, is dealing with losing a loved one for the first time. But that's not her only loss. With her abuela's passing comes the loss of her homeland, her mother tongue, and throughout the course of the film, her innocence. We meet Nina on the day she moves into her new home with her estranged mother after the loss of her beloved abuela. Almost immediately upon her arrival, she tries to keep her abuela's spirit alive in her surroundings and practices 21 divisiones, Dominican voodoo, and prays to the same altar and misterios as her abuela did. When mommy comes home to find Nina lighting candles, pouring out liquor to offer to the misterios, and dancing around a makeshift altar, she realizes that Nina has adopted her abuela's strange ways. She's horrified. She punishes her by throwing away everything on the altar but her abuela's photo. Mommy tells Nina, you must be careful what you believe because what you believe becomes who you are. But this is easier said than done. Nina has always held on to the belief that her abuela taught her that her albinism was a blessing, not a curse. Nina, uncomfortable in her new surroundings at an all-girls Catholic school, starts to act out. When she runs away into the woods on the outskirts of her school, she finds a dead albino deer wounded by an arrow. Feeling an innate connection to it, she lays her hands over it and prays, and it comes back to life. And with the deer's apparent resurrection comes Baron, the misterio of death, ready to make a bargain. Nina, not ready to accept death, runs away, but Baron follows her. He shows up during her class's show and tell and causes mayhem, embarrassing her and further ostracizing her at school. Nina feels safer in her new friendship with her neighbor and fellow outsider, the defiant Paul. Paul, whose mother is terminally ill, avoids being at home by spending time in his secret treehouse, filled with things like bows and arrows and supplies for a life without parents. Nina's stubbornness and her feelings of abandonment are only heightened when she is forced to spend the night at one of the popular girls' homes, Gloria, who convinces her to dye her blonde curls black. She thinks her mommy will be happy that she's more like the others now. But instead, mommy punishes her. And to hurt Nina, declares to mommy's face she wishes mommy was the one who had died. Soon after, Baron appears to Nina during confession and tells her he'll make good on her wish. Scared, she tells him she lied and doesn't want her mommy dead. She tells him he can take Paul's mother instead, who is already going to die. Though when death comes to take Paul's mother in an ambulance, Paul isn't relieved, he's in distress. She realizes that even Paul hasn't accepted death. When he goes missing, Nina decides to risk her own life and face death head-on to find him. Nina learns that she must stop running and accept death to start living her new life with mommy here, and that it is only after she challenges her own belief systems for the first time that she'll grow and know what to hold onto and what to leave behind. Why tell this story? Well, have you seen this story before? Imagine an authentic immigrant family story like Minari and We the Animals wrapped in the horror of Pan's Labyrinth and magical realism of Beasts of the Southern Wild. Don't you want to see that? Much like immigrants and first-gen Americans, our film can't easily be put in a box. But we do know its universal appeal is that you've probably felt the things our characters grapple with. And after a year with so much loss like 2020, at least we can all relate to what it feels like to lose a part of yourself. I lost my abuela this past year. When my abuela made the choice to come to the United States, she took the dangerous journey from the DR to Puerto Rico in a small, crowded boat to risk everything to make a life for her family here so that she could build something for them to come to when she was in a position to call for them, just like Mami and Leche. This is not a unique story. This is a story of many. My abuelo warned her that this choice might have everlasting consequences. He was worried that by coming here, their kids might never want to go back there, and that they'd lose their roots in the DR. What he feared kind of came true. I wanted to tell Leche because of this, because I don't want to keep losing our stories. I had already lost Spanish along the way, struggling to communicate with my abuelos as a little girl, until I was determined to learn it on my own. Ni de aquí, ni de allá, I felt a kinship with being the other. Born to two immigrant parents from the Caribbean, I often felt not Latina enough, not being fluent and not looking like the women in telenovelas, and not South Asian enough, being Indo-Guyanese. I've learned that we can often be our own worst enemies in the fight towards self-love and acceptance, because it is in many of our own communities that we perpetrate toxic beauty standards and colorism. That's why I wrote this young female lead, both ostracized and praised for her looks. Authenticity is important to me, even if the world we are creating is magical realism told through a child's imagination and point of view. The first thing we did was cast our young lead, a young Black girl with albinism who could help us illuminate Nina's world. And we will highlight our protagonist's specific experience with vision impairment and light sensitivity in camera through lens flares and lens whacking, creating at times a more out-of-focus ethereal world. We have also begun designing the misterios and wardrobe and makeup, a mixture of playfulness like characters out of Guillermo del Toro's world, and with organic materials influenced by the work of Cuban artist Ana Mendieta. When it comes to our team, my producers are collaborators in the truest sense. And there was no doubt in my mind when Martise Hill and Julius Pryor approached me to read the feature and watch the proof of concept that they'd be good partners. They want to elevate voices and stories just like this one. And they are just as determined as me. We've been on this journey for the past 5 years, and this past year has only helped it become even more fully realized.
Gabriella's right. It's been an educational, enriching, and inspiring 5 years building this story to share with the world. Our producing colleague Shruti Ganguly and her team at Honto 88 have the same mission and believe international stories deserve specificity and truth. We've received support from the Dominican community in New York City that has allowed us to set up our production LLC, hire a line producer to help refine our budget, do preliminary scouts in the Kingston, Woodstock, upstate New York area, and start casting our supporting characters with our casting director, Erica Hart. We've casted Puerto Rican actress and international supermodel Joan Smalls to play Mommy. Gabriella's longtime collaborator and a Film Independent Spirit Award nominated cinematographer Zach Cooperstein will photograph the film. Music and score are essential story elements, and we're in late stage talks to attach composers Ibeyi, Afro-Cuban sisters whose music influenced by Santeria illustrates the fusion of African, Native Taino, and Spanish roots in the tradition of Dominican voodoo. HBO Max is the ideal distribution partner because it will help bring a Latinx story to a broader audience who might not always be exposed to characters like this. The support we've received from prestigious organizations such as the Sundance Institute, the Gotham, New York Women in Film and TV, and Los Cabos Film Market continue to propel us forward. We will make this film by any means necessary.
As Martise shared, we're ready. We are the indie filmmaking experience embodied. We're scrappy and we're determined, and we've had a lot of triumph and rejection. And we wouldn't be here now without the community's continued support. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have people tell me every time I pitch this film or speak on it that they want to see this, that they don't know any Dominican female directors, and I mean, there's a lot of us out there, or that they haven't seen their albinism community portrayed on screen before in this way. The other day when I was speaking to our lead and her mother, I was told a story about how when Penny was even younger, she asked her mother, "Are there other people with albinism?" This film is for her and all those others who felt unseen, those young Black and brown women, Afro-Latinos who are so rarely depicted in the sparse Latin representation we're afforded, those with albinism, those with misunderstood beliefs, anyone who has ever felt uncomfortable in their own skin. I hope you'll allow us to let you into this world of this untold story. It's for the ancestors. It's for my abuela. Dios le bendiga, abuelita. Te quiero mucho. We know we haven't given up faith in it over the last several years, and we're ready, if you'll just believe.
What a fascinating pitch. Let's now welcome writer and director Gabriella A. Moses and producer Martise Hill for our live Q&A. Welcome, Gabriella and Martise. Where are you joining us from today?
We are in Harlem, in New York City, holding it down here.
Harlem World.
Love. Are you ready for the judges to ask you a few questions?
Absolutely.
Let's get started. Karen.
I have a question. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that amazing pitch and that beautiful story. I was wondering, how old is your actor now? How old is Penny now, and how does her, and over the 5 years since you began this journey, affect your story?
Yes, so Penny is actually 7 years old, about to turn 8 in July, and throughout our journey, we actually had to recast our lead. So very specific lead. We had Ava Clark attached to be our lead. She was in our original proof of concept, and when she aged out of the role and what we intended for the heart of the story and this age, we decided to recast, which was a difficult decision, and Ava will always be a part of this project, but we were able to find Penelope Casado, who is Dominican American, and fit the role as well. And so that just speaks more to our determination as well, that we knew what we needed for our protagonist, and we were able to go out and recast when we needed to. It it was difficult, but she is about to turn 8 and the perfect age for this.
Great.
Next question, anyone? Nisha.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Vina, we'll get to you next. Thank you.
So you brought up a topic that I am very interested in, which is colorism, and you have this albinism that seems like just a rich storytelling area for you to bring this incredible subject without being too didactic, because it works in with the actual cast and your story. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what the theme is and what you're trying to say, and how you'll address sort of colorism with the story?
Of course. So I grew up, like I mentioned, South Asian and Dominican. And so growing up, I often felt that I needed to not tan in the summer, and I would wear sweaters at gym and think that I didn't want to be darker. And it was because of the portrayals I saw of our community on screen, watching telenovelas, and then in the Indo-Guyanese community, seeing how there were disparities between Black and Indians in the country. And so there were these internalized thoughts that I had. And in Leche, I wanted to tell this through the point of view of a child. And when you're first seeing this in your community and being praised by maybe the older members of the community, and then the younger girls are kind of jealous, and what that means, but also wanting to fit in with those others. So in the film, there's kind of magical realism that comes in. There's a lot of magical realism in Latino stories. And so we tell that mommy bathed in milk when she was a little girl, and it's part of the spiritual milk bath that her abuela, who's a mama mamba, used to give her mommy. And so there's this lore surrounding why Nina came out with albinism, and so that further creates a story of mysticism around her existence. But reality is she has albinism and she has this condition, and it's creating these different issues in her own personal life, and how she sees herself and how she's accepted. So I want to speak to that in terms of just, like I said, how sometimes these things of being light-skinned, you're both ostracized and then also applauded, and how having these mixed families where there's so many different hues and so many different people in it, and what that looks like, be presented on screen. Because I don't think we see that enough either, that our families are very mixed, and how we celebrate or celebrate that.
Vina?
So is it all internalized, or is
Go ahead, Nisha.
Sorry. Okay. So is it all internalized, or is it actual, like the parents sort of tell her as well, like, being lighter is better, basically, by like, don't get tan, don't go outside, don't get that. Which also being South Asian.
Yeah, we see it through. Yeah. No, we definitely see it in scenes like at the hair salon, where the women are like, "Oh, you look like an angel. Like your hair is so beautiful, Rubia." So we see that come in through the other women, and it's in the subtle ways that I think it does exist in our community. Sometimes it's not so overt as like, put on this sweater, don't get tan for the other girls. It's kind of what we value and how we treat the people around us. So yeah, we see Nina being praised, and then we see how that affects the other girls who see her and want to ostracize her, but also are a bit jealous. So there are some of those overt statements being made in scenes with the other adults and girls, calling her Blanquita, little white one, and Leche, which is her nickname because of her white.
Okay, I'm so sorry, we have to keep moving. Remember, if you loved Leche, then you can vote for them for the Fan Favorite Award by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you, Gabriela and Martise. Our next film is Homegoing. Homegoing is the story of Junior Carmichael. Haunted by nightmares, Junior, a musical prodigy, returns home to his family's funeral parlor in Cleveland, Ohio, to salvage his grip on reality. While finding his place in the world, Junior must come to terms with his family, community, and the man he loves. Let's hear now from the filmmakers.
Hello, my name is Carlton Daniel Jr. I'm the writer and director of Homegoing. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland is the city I hold dearest to my heart. It's the place I'll always call home, and it serves as the backdrop to our film, Homegoing. Now, in the literal sense, a homegoing is a Black funeral tradition for families to grieve their loved ones. In the spiritual sense, they're embraced as the ultimate journey to one's origin, or a spiritual realm that transcends suffering and injustice. What you are seeing are selected photos of the creative team with our very own loved ones and families of origin. Our film Homegoing is a story about love of one's family, love of your partner, and love of one's community, all within the setting of a 3-generation household and funeral parlor. So imagine you're in Cleveland. It's a cool autumn night. There isn't another person in sight. You're walking all alone down an old, abandoned industrial alleyway. The skeletons of old factories tower high above you. Fluorescent streetlights spotlight a dark and foggy path. You feel the cool Lake Erie breeze rushing over your body, giving you goosebumps. You see an alligator casually crossing the road ahead, but you still continue walking towards it. As you approach an old, beat-up hearse, you take out a set of keys from your pocket, accidentally dropping them to the ground. You reach down, pick them up, and BAM! Staring directly at you is the alligator, jaws open, ready to attack. Night after night, our main character, Junior, is haunted by nightmares just like these. Homegoing's visual aesthetic is as eerie as a nightmare, yet familiar as a memory, guiding both Junior and our audience back and forth between real life and a spiritual realm. The film's color palette consists of cool, earthy tones of blues, greens, oranges, browns. As director, I'll also be using contrast, shallow depth of field, and various camera movements to visually tell this story and immerse you inside Junior's surreal world. Junior Carmichael is a musical prodigy. He's in his early 20s, attends music conservatory, and is unapologetically Black and gay. He rocks gold hoop earrings, a natural fro, crop tops, and heeled boots. When he's not practicing piano or showing up late for classes, he spends his free time partying and picking up men. But after one night of blacking out and a recommendation from his therapist, Junior decides it's best to take a leave of absence and return home for a while to focus on his mental health. Our story takes place in present-day Cleveland. Waiting for Junior back home is his grandmother Ruth and father Senior. Together, Ruth and Senior run one of the last Black funeral parlors left in the city. The first thing he's told upon touching down is, "If you're home, we expect you to work." But Junior doesn't even see the parlor as a part of his future. However, it isn't long before he realizes his community is changing rapidly. His grandmother and father are growing older, and as his nightmares worsen, larger forces are at play in keeping him home. This is when Junior learns from his grandmother a secret family magic. A magic that's been passed down in her family for generations. A magic that informs why he's being haunted by these nightmares. Junior's childhood friends, Mecca and Malik, also work at the parlor. Now growing up, Junior and Malik were inseparable, sharing their first kiss as teenagers. However, as adults, Malik is still coming to terms with his sexuality. They haven't been as close since. But the more time they spend with one another, the more those old feelings start to resurface. As Junior's relationships begin to blossom, and he learns about his family history from his grandmother, he gains a deeper understanding of himself and what his dreams are really trying to tell him. Homegoing was inspired by my deeply personal experiences of navigating my own mental wellness and working at a Black funeral parlor in my hometown, all about reconnecting with old friends, my parents, and my grandma, getting to know them for who they were as people for the very first time. Junior's journey in our film is one of self-discovery. We show this by exploring themes of Black love, mental wellness, and Afro-surrealism. In our film, the Louverture Funeral Home is one of the last Black funeral parlors left in Cleveland. Because of gentrification, many parlors have been forced to shut down permanently. A historical institution that withstood segregation and prospered through it is now struggling just to make ends meet. Senior's character is torn over whether or not to sell the very business Ruth built from the ground up. One of the things that makes Homegoing so important is the history it highlights about Black funeral parlors in America. Traditionally, these are businesses passed down from generation to generation, being a beacon of hope for the communities in which they stand.
Hi, my name's Evan. I'm one of the producers for Homegoing. Extremely excited to be here today as I've been with the film from day one, boots on the ground, fighting for it to get made. This will be my third production with Carlton, and I wholeheartedly believe in the work that we create together because of the visions that we embark on. When we talk about using Afro-Surrealism, we're tapping into a cultural aesthetic. It's one that cultivates expanded ways of knowing and being for Black folks. It explores the surreal, otherworldly experience of always being on the outside looking in, and it presupposes that beyond this visible world, there's an invisible one striving to manifest, and it's our job as artists to uncover it. Being from the Rust Belt, you know, when I first read this script, I knew it would resonate with so many people and so many community members because it's a story that illuminates the complexity of healing, the journey of it. We laugh, we cry, we love. And as a queer Black man myself navigating America, it's so rare to see so many delicate and honest pieces of yourself written into the very bones of a script, especially when you see your communities in it. And Homegoing is an honest depiction of what it truly means to live within and beyond the horizons of this world. Black, queer, or just human. What do those realities really manifest into today, right now? And as the film distorts reality for emotional impact, what will that offer us in respects to our own collective healing? That is the beauty of film. Yet Homegoing is a film that's rarely seen on screens because of the fact that it centers Black healing. And there are so many who just relate to that journey of healing. I personally relate to those stories, yet we still don't see them. And that's why today, in this world right now, Homegoing has no choice but to be made because it's so desperately needed right now.
Hi, I'm Diana, producer of Homegoing. My films are played at most major film festivals, except Tribeca. Tribeca is my unrequited love, so I'm particularly thrilled to be here today. I seek out and collaborate with filmmakers with bold, unique voices, whose worldview excites me, whose characters are round, relatable and nuanced, and who are telling stories of diaspora and belonging and of specific experience. Growing up Chinese Malaysian in Australia, the child of an immigrant, and then later becoming an immigrant myself, informs the types of stories I want to tell. And from page one, Homegoing was a story I knew I wanted to bring to screen. It was tangible, emotional, and it was beautiful. The attraction to story wasn't just Carlton's characters and the world they inhabit, but it was also the place. Homegoing is a film of, by, and for Cleveland, and we will respect that by filming on location in Cleveland's historic Black neighborhoods. Because Homegoing is a film about who we are as people, we want to carry that through our creative process. We want to draw a lot of our cast and crew from local communities, especially people of color and queer people of color who are underrepresented in film and television. It's part of our creative vision that the film is made by people that it is for.
Homegoing is a film that celebrates the Black and the queer community. This film is for us, though it also appeals to a broad audience base that loves heartfelt, independent cinema. The question I pose to you today is, if we don't ever see ourselves represented, or if we're constantly prohibited from telling our own stories, how can we ever expect to be fully seen or valued as a community? This film explores the supernatural elements of our Blackness and the surprising places of comfort found within a family-owned funeral parlor. Front and center, Homegoing is a film about love, familial and queer. The Black love in our story takes shape in Junior and Malik's romance, but also in Junior's intergenerational relationships with his father and his grandmother. Because how can one truly know where they're going if they don't know the origins from which they came? Following a year of so much loss and America's ongoing battle with systemic racism, this moment we're living in right now requires thoughtful and intentional artwork like Homegoing. It requires us to lean in to our artists, our activists, and our historians who are striving to make the radical changes desperately needed for this country to heal and to grow. This is why Homegoing must be made right now, and why we are the best team to do it. My name is Carlton Daniel Jr., and I thank you for listening to our pitch for Homegoing.
Such a compelling story. Let's welcome writer and director Carlton Daniel Jr. and producer Evan Starling Davis for our live Q&A. Welcome, Carlton and Evan. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining from Cleveland, Ohio.
And I'm from Syracuse, New York at the moment.
Awesome. Are you ready for the judges to ask you a few questions?
Yes.
Let's get started. Trace.
Hey, Carlton and Evan. I grew up in the Rust Belt too, in Dayton, and spent summers in East Cleveland with my grandma. So I was just wondering, you kind of touched on this, but do you feel like there's a universal theme here for forgotten cities in the Rust Belt and people who are trying to get out, but also kind of honoring the life that is there and the specialness, for lack of a better word, of that part of our country? Or was that something that you were trying to drive home as well, like a love letter to Cleveland or the Rust Belt in general?
Yeah, absolutely. This film is my love letter to Cleveland. Cleveland is a city I also grew up in a place I hold so dear in my heart, and it's also a community that's rapidly changing. And it's so important for us to like make this film now to capture these moments and how the city is before it's something completely different that we don't even recognize. And the story of Cleveland is the same story of so many cities all across America. But unfortunately, those stories are never told and never heard. So many productions come to Cleveland every year to shoot films, but rarely are they ever about or centered on Cleveland. So this is what this film is for.
Cool.
Vina.
Hi. Hey, congratulations. Such a great script, such a great story. Love the funeral home history, so important. I'm from Ohio too, and I also appreciate very much how centered and specific the script is to Ohio, which is a very specific state in American history for obvious reasons. Can you talk about, and I love the idea of surrealism and how you pitched it. Can you talk about because it is a $1 million budget, the crocodile is genius. How else will surrealism play in your movie? And can you talk about technical execution given the indie budget?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can tackle the alligator question first, and then Carlton, you can talk about surrealism. So for the alligator scene, we plan on using it as a composite and soliciting and licensing alligator footage and just compositing with the scene.
And in terms of the surrealism, well, it's really just a bending of reality in terms of putting Junior, our main character, in spaces that normally he wouldn't be in. So it would be within budget, but be played with his reality, in a sense. And all that takes place within his dreams.
Thank you.
Karen.
Sure.
Hi, thank you guys for presenting this to us. I wonder, you talk a lot about how Black funeral homes are losing their ways because of gentrification. Why is it important for this to take place in a funeral home? How will you deal with the loss around us because people are in a funeral home and that's, they're dealing with loss? And how do you tie in the character story with the loss that's surrounding them in the funeral home?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, this story was inspired by my own experiences of leaving film school, graduating film school, and returning home to my hometown in Cleveland. My mom telling me, you got to find a job, and the only place I know hiring is the local funeral home. And and I went there and got a job, and I was so compelled and so moved by the family who owned the business. I was compelled and moved by the people in the community who we were servicing day after day. And I was surprised by how much comfort and beauty took place within this family-owned funeral parlor. And, even though death is present because it is a business that deals with grieving loved ones, but we're highlighting the love of the family, the love of what this actually does for the community in terms of providing jobs and providing a safe haven for people to actually comfortably grieve their loved ones, and what these institutions mean to the communities in which they serve. Because unfortunately, many of them we are losing them, and they are closing down.
And last question, Kellen.
Beautiful story, guys. Thanks so much for sharing with us today. What do you hope the audience thinks or feels or does after watching the film?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we want the people to really just gain a different understanding of what it means to be Black and queer in America today. You know, we want to show our complexity. We want to show our the wholeness of ourselves and how we operate within our communities, and ultimately we want to show our love because we've seen so much loss and we've seen so much trauma this year, and we want to show a different picture for this coming year. We want to show the love of Black men, which we really get to see love between two queer Black men, and love of family, and love of a character who is exploring those intergenerational relationships from his father and grandmother, and learning about his past to really inform his future and where he's going. Because as a country, we're in such a pivotal moment right now where we as a country are deciding who we want to be and where we want to go and how we want to move forward, which is exactly what Junior is going through.
Thank you both so much. Remember, if you loved Homegoing, then you can vote for them for the Fan Favorite Award by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you, Carlton and Evan. Our next film is Neon Tilapia. When a dangerous water weed threatens to take over his lake and livelihood, a fisherman in rural Kenya forms an unexpected alliance with his estranged granddaughter to fight back using glowing, genetically modified fish. As strange lights appear in the lake, chaos erupts in the village, and the two are challenged to reach a new understanding of each other. Let's hear now from the filmmakers.
Habari zenu. I'm Tony Koros, and I'm the writer and director of Neon Tilapia.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Charles, and I'm the producer of Neon Tilapia.
Neon Tilapia is a portrait of a place and a people that I grew up around, but seen through the prism of two people who are losing the thing that helped them feel safe and helped them understand their place in the world. The film centers around Giddy, a fisherman who is losing his trade, and Zeddy, his granddaughter, who is losing the opportunity for education. Now, that's a difficult thing for anyone, but I think when you grow up in poverty, the things that promise hope or security tend to take on a lot more meaning. And when they're threatened, you will fight like hell to keep them. When I was a child, my grandparents would take me to Kisumu. It's a small town along Lake Victoria. Now, there's not much money going around in Kisumu, but it's the kind of place where people don't stop to complain about their problems. They just find really innovative solutions. For example, a fisherman doesn't have an icebox to move his fish from the lake to the market, and the drivers won't let him on the bus because he'll stink up the place. What he does is he convinces them to let him tie the fish to the front of the bus, and then we all shut some windows and then we just drive really, really fast. Or you sell bootleg Hollywood DVDs for a living, but many of your customers don't speak English. What you do is you set up a little screening kiosk and then you charge your customers to listen to you do live translations of bootleg Hollywood films. Kisumu is a place where people thrive in difficult circumstances with ingenuity and this wry, unsentimental kind of humor. And I think there's something really beautiful and moving about that. So I wanted to make a film that would be both an honest exploration of the circumstances of their lives, but also a celebration of that.
So what Tony just described to you is the place that he remembers from when he was growing up. But since then, Lake Victoria has been under attack. This is hyacinth. It's a water weed that pulls out oxygen from the water and suffocates the fish. You can't use fishing nets in it, and staring a boat through it is really difficult. The problem's been ongoing for years for the fishermen and their families who rely on that income, but the government hasn't been motivated to fix it because it's more profitable for them individually to siphon the money meant for it for themselves. Therein enters the film Neon Tilapia.
The story begins with Giddy, a local fisherman who is just tired of fighting for his livelihood. He spends hours on the lake trying to catch what few fish he can, and when he's not doing that, he's down at the chief's office protesting, even if no one is listening and even if he's the only one. He is a one-man army in bright yellow basketball shorts, standing on top of a wheelbarrow, yelling for change. And Giddy is aware that his fight is futile and that the chief is completely corrupt, but fishing is all he knows, so he will not stop.
In the middle of all of this, Zeddy, his estranged granddaughter, returns from university. She's had to drop out after becoming pregnant, causing her to lose her scholarship. Giddy is so mad he can barely look at her. All of his years on the lake have been for her, and now this. But when Zeddy sees what's going on, she suggests a solution. If we can't get rid of the hyacinth, maybe we can make the fish easier to catch. As a molecular biology student, she understands the rudiments of gene editing technology and knows that it's quite possible and not even that difficult to make fish that glow. The science of this is 100% real. But Giddy has no time for Zeddy and her shiny fish, so his wife, Tweary, bullies him into helping their granddaughter.
So Giddy and Zeddy set out to create glowing tilapia. And as they work together, they slowly learn how to speak to each other again and find forgiveness. Eventually, they succeed. They make bright, shiny neon tilapia. But then chaos erupts. Some of the townspeople see the appearance of strange lights in the lake as a very bad omen. They want the devil fish gone immediately. But this sets them up against other townsfolk who see this as an opportunity. The fishermen have something to fish again. They argue that, yes, the fish are a little bit shiny, but that just means we have to give you a discount. And if you don't want to eat them, just put a few of them together. They make a nice lamp. So as tensions rise, Giddy and Zeddy find themselves at the center of a collision of the community's superstition and also their economic interests.
In trying to fight for their livelihood, Giddy and Zeddy inadvertently pit themselves against the ideologies forged over centuries of what is possible for a community, for an old man, for a young woman.
This film began with the intention to celebrate a people. And also because the idea of glowing fish running amok in a small town was really fun to me. But as I got to know the characters in Neon Tilapia, I realized that what the film is truly about is two people who are struggling to hold on to the things that define them. For Giddy, it's a trade that has provided for those he loves for decades. And for Zeddy, it's the promise of education and a path out of a life of poverty, not just for herself, but for her family as well. Now let me tell you about what I hope the film will look like and feel like. I would like to create an experience for the viewer that will feel like my first time in Kisumu when my grandparents took me there so long ago. Without embellishment, observational, and making no judgments about the people we're going to be following. I want the camera to stand at a slightly frustrating distance, just wide enough to show you tableau of real lives crashing into and against each other, without place for the audience's sympathy. Something in the vein of Sisako's Timbuktu or Court by Chaitanya Tamane. And I think it's important that I do this because it would strip away any sense of superiority we as the audience might feel looking at people in such dire circumstances of poverty, and allows me to present them to you as just as they are, people who are complex and flawed, absurd and funny. Also, and maybe because I've been writing about glowing fish for so long, I've become really interested in the idea of bioluminescence. So my cinematographer and I are exploring what it would look like if we lit the film with only the things that nature provides. Besides just the sun and the moon, we're thinking close-ups lit only by fireflies and lighting action with only the light from a glowing lake.
This will be Tony and my 6th project together. Though this is our first feature film, together with our cinematographer, Dominika Eriksson, and production designer, Lillian Prentice, we have already shot 2 short films in Kenya. Both were screened at Clermont-Ferrand, while the most recent, Tithes and Offerings, was distributed by Canal+. Tony and I met in our first year of NYU's MFA program. He was a talented filmmaker then and now. As a writer, Tony has worked on several shows in Kenya and has received a number of awards, including the Alexis Prize from Palm Springs Short Fest, the NYU Hollywood Foreign Press Association grant, the NYU Sloan Grant, TFI Sloan Grant, and a Sundance Screenwriting and Directing Lab Fellowship. I am proud to work with my favorite filmmaker, writer-director Tony Koros.
Liz is the first person I show the script to. She is the person whose notes I listen to most closely, even if it sometimes takes me a couple of days to come around. She's not just my producer, she is a true creative partner. Liz is an MBA MFA graduate of the NYU Stern School of Business and NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. We've made films together that have premiered at several top-tier film festivals, and her projects have amassed over 20 million digital views. She's a 2020 Sundance Creative Producing Fellow and the recipient of the Mark Silverman Honor. And now she's founded Siren Media, a startup that aims to empower underrepresented filmmakers.
We are confident that this film can be made now for $1 million. The script is ready. We've been able to workshop it through development support from Sloan via NYU and the Tribeca Film Institute, in addition to the Academy Awarded Sine Qua Non Screenwriting Lab and Sundance. The budget was refined in the Sundance Creative Producing Program, Atlas Workshop, and the Marrakesh Film Festival, and conversations at Gotham Week. We've already filmed in Kenya, and we've also developed a pod of talent there that we can pull from for this picture as well. We're ready to go, and this funding will help take us there.
Together, Liz and I aim to make a film that will celebrate the resilience in all of us, our ingenuity, our communities, our families, and ultimately, our fragile, hopeful, beautiful humanity. Neon Tilapia is about the indomitable people of Lake Victoria, but it's also about all of us right now, who, in spite of our circumstances, find ways to thrive. We can't wait to tell this story. Asanteni sana.
Amazing pitch. Let's welcome writer and director Tony Koros and producer Elizabeth Charles for our live Q&A. Welcome, Tony and Elizabeth. Where are you joining us from today?
Hey everyone, I'm joining you from Harlem, New York.
And I'm joining remotely from the Cayman Islands.
Great. Are you ready for the judges to ask you a few questions?
Yeah, let's do this.
Nisha.
Hi, it was such a beautiful, beautiful pitch, and it's clear from your materials that you are, you know what you're doing. It's going to be very cinematic and really well thought out, just not both in terms of your themes, but also your craft and how you're going to shoot it. The one question I had was, because it's a little bit VFX heavy with these glowing fish, how do you plan to execute that part? Because everything else is so clear how you're doing it. This is the one question I had about practically shooting.
I always went into this aware that I wouldn't have a huge budget to execute. So I intentionally wrote in very few shots and scenes that would actually require the use of VFX. We actually recently came up with with a budget for that, and like actually just like the breakdown, and it only comes up to about 10 shots. So I'm pretty sure we'll be able to do it for the budget we have.
And have you, just curious, have you done a test with lighting with only fireflies?
No, but I would love to. I'm aware that I will not be able to use actual fireflies, but I am okay doing that in post.
Next question.
I had a question. In terms of a beautiful pitch, incredible story, the cinematic element of this film is just potentially just so extraordinary. So a similar question to some degree as Nisha, but in terms of so you have 10 shots. And have you budgeted each shot? Have you gone to VFX houses? Has that, okay, great.
Yeah, so a part of it I think that I would want to mention is that when Tony was writing, he wanted the effect of the fish to be somewhat realistic, even though it will still be magical. And so we took those shots, we took it to a VFX house, we had them give us bids on what it would cost to do. It's obviously the largest part of the budget, but it's doable within what we have, we believe.
Fantastic. That's great.
A little bit of praise for paying attention to like how you're depicting the culture and not falling into sort of poverty porn, and it's really refreshing and beautiful to hear the thoughtfulness that you have in how to tell the story from the culture.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yes, Kellen.
Oh, similar comment to Nisha. I think it is so smart to make sure that the audience doesn't feel that sense of superiority with the way you're planning on shooting it. How are you gonna make sure that the audience though still feels connected to your sort of main protagonist?
That's a really interesting question. One I want to tackle by showing you my characters in their fullness. I think very often you see these characters through the lens of pain. And part of what I want to do is show you them as they experience just life as everyone else does. And that includes joy, and that includes absurdity, that includes ambition and frustration. And I think just showing them in their fullness will allow anyone to connect with them because you see them as actual people.
Beautiful. Gorgeous.
Excellent. Remember, if you loved Neon Tilapia, then you can vote for them for the Fan Favorite Award by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you, Tony and Elizabeth. Our next film is Johnny Loves Dolores. As a community in Queens struggles to keep afloat during the 2008 recession, a lonely, underpaid clerk considers a lucrative green card marriage that runs counter to his ideal of marrying for love. His plans are complicated when an undocumented immigrant he secretly adores finds herself in dire financial need. Let's hear now from the filmmakers.
Hi, my name is Clarissa De Los Reyes, and I'm the writer-director of Johnny Loves Dolores. So this is a story about a love that takes root in a place called Phil Express. It's this dingy Filipino-style Western Union in Queens, New York, where Filipino immigrants send their love home in the form of dollar remittances and care packages. It's the fall of 2008, and the struggling immigrant community has no idea of just how devastating the recession would be for them. Our main character is this guy named Johnny, who's this lonely, socially awkward clerk who works at Phil Express and who sometimes goes on these green card dates arranged by an enterprising coworker. He does so even if it runs counter to his ideal of marrying for love, because at stake is upwards of $10,000. A start to a modest nest egg that he will never get just working for minimum wage. But these dates never work out for Johnny, because deep down, he's secretly pining for this woman named Dolores, an undocumented immigrant and a frequent customer at Phil Express. She makes a living as a nanny to this 5-year-old boy with whom she has more of a relationship than her own daughter that she's left behind in the Philippines. She longs for her child every single day, but convinces herself that securing her daughter's financial future will be the best thing she'll ever do for her. So without fail, she makes regular trips to Phil Express to send money home, and each time, Johnny could only admire her from afar. Then one day, she reappears at Phil Express after a long absence. We find out that she's lost her job and is in desperate need of one. The manager turns her away, but Johnny sees an opportunity and impulsively hires her to clean his tiny room in this illegal sublet that he shares with other Filipinos. Dolores is suspicious of his motives, but agrees out of desperation. But just as they begin to get to know each other, the recession takes a turn for the worse, and Johnny himself loses his job. Determined to keep Dolores in his life, he'll do whatever it takes, even marry another woman, for the sake of the woman he truly loves.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Remedios Mejia, producer of Johnny Loves Dolores. My first entree to the story was through the short, which genuinely surprised me. As an independent film producer, I search for stories that are authentic and simple in its approach, but with a deeper meaning behind the story. When I find these stories, I try my best to make sure they are supported and find their way to an audience. But most importantly, I choose to support a story because I believe in the director's vision. Working with Clarissa these last couple of years and watching her develop it to where it is now through COVID, while juggling motherhood and family, I realized just how much she understands the art of humanistic storytelling because it is a reflection of who she is as a filmmaker and as a person. I'm a second-generation Filipino-American, daughter of hard-working immigrant parents. Before I left for college, my dad sat me down and told me life would be better for me because I'd have more opportunities. Those opportunities led me to work in the public sector, where I saw firsthand the struggles of many in the immigrant community. I ran legal clinics, aided in access to healthcare, work, and education. I watched them take their hard-earned money and send all of it back to their families. They would tell me their stories and how they wanted people to know and understand their experiences. My father moved back to the Philippines after he retired. A better life for me meant he sacrificed his own opportunities. I find myself determined to tell these stories as a nod to my parents' sacrifice. This is why I continue this often challenging journey in independent film.
This film will veer away from the usual trappings of movies about love. Characters will not be bathed in a soft, flattering light. We will light places and not just faces because the environment is just as much a character in the story. The camera will pan away from tourist attractions of New York City and instead take us into these little scene corners, down Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, into fluorescent lit storefronts and rundown sublets where, although people are crammed together in such small spaces, you still feel the isolation and loneliness. Like in the short film, I'll continue to reference American painter Edward Hopper, whose work was heavily influenced by the Great Depression. His work is all the more resonant, especially today. Referencing Hopper in a film set in one of the largest melting pots in the country, a film mostly in a foreign language that tells a story about issues that are profoundly American, is a way for me to affirm what I know to be true, that the immigrant experience is America's story.
In an ideal world, we would love to shoot this film in 22 days, in Queens, with the backdrop of New York City. We're hoping to go into pre-production late this summer and go into production later in the fall to early winter. During this development stage, we're already starting to build out our team, scout potential locations, and seek additional support. We understand the current situation with COVID restrictions, so we've incorporated these factors into our budget to keep everyone safe and supported. This opportunity to pitch for this grant really means a lot to us. As Filipino-American filmmakers, for us to be able to make a feature with this kind of funding means we have the ability to take risks, not just on a story that isn't often told, but on the people in front of and behind the camera. We don't have what people would consider big names, and that's what's exciting to us. If we win, we can make this film with old and new friends who are great at what they do, passionate about their craft, but are often overlooked when lists are curated. This opportunity will open doors for so many who have already paid their dues.
We're talking to a wonderful actor right now, Noni Buencamino, whose work I really admire. This will allow us to take a risk on him. We're doing an open call for the role of Dolores and other roles in the film because we know that there's just so much talent out there who, like us, are just wanting to take the next step in a career that they've already risked so much for. I've been in development on this film for almost a decade now. I know how much of a huge difference this grant will make, not just in my career, but really in my life. But to be able to grow with other artists, especially with those in my community, will make this journey even more meaningful.
We also want to tell stories that connect communities and build this world of understanding with untold narratives. The Asian American experience should not be reduced to one single mainstream story every couple of years. This creates incomplete stories of who we are, which has led us to where we are now. And that is what Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie referred to as the danger of a single story. We are more than that. More often than not, we share the same human values and compassion. With Johnny Loves Dolores, we want to give another angle on the overseas foreign worker experience, from from the perspective of a community that is one of the largest exporters of human labor, the Filipino community. The same community that is often lost in the fold when we discuss the Asian American experience, despite being the first Asian group here and the third largest immigrant group in the country. We want to ensure that beyond the $1 million prize, we are able to uplift these very same communities and small business owners who were hit hardest because of COVID. We want to build a network of support through this film, through the story it tells, and the stories that spark from it. This is not just a moment for us, it is our opportunity to continue the movement.
I started writing this story because as a child growing up in the Philippines, I was obsessed with the US dollar-peso exchange rate. I was raised mostly by my grandmothers. Every month, we'd go to a foreign exchange center and convert the dollars my parents would send us into pesos. I was basically Dolores' child. I was upset that my parents weren't around, but I was also grateful for the material security they were able to provide because they chose to work overseas. Years later, when I moved to the US and became a mom, I realized just how conflicted they must have been about leaving me behind in order to give me a better life. I get it, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that that rate of exchange was pretty high. It cost us our family. When the 2008 recession happened, the images of people laid off on Wall Street was something I saw over and over again. But what I didn't see were people in already struggling immigrant communities like mine, and how poor economic policy trickled down into their lives and the people who depended on them. It made me think of my own childhood and what my family had to sacrifice. Today, we face something far worse in the 2008 recession. But the questions that I had then, when I started writing the short film, are still pretty much the same. What are people willing to give up for the American dream? Is it worth it? How can we have empathy and compassion for one another, especially in times of hardship? How can we forge meaningful relationships in a community trying to survive, and where money has become a currency for love? Thank you for seeing us, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our story with you.
Such a beautiful story. Let's welcome writer and director Clarissa de los Reyes and producer Cecilia R. Mejia for our live Q&A. Welcome, Clarissa and Cecilia. Where are you joining from today?
Brooklyn, New
Calling
York.
in from Brooklyn.
Perfect. Are you ready for the judges to ask you a few questions?
Sure.
Yes.
Let's get started.
I'll jump in. Hi. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think even though it's so specific, it's also a very universal story. That's something I love about it. But seeing that it is universal, how do you intend to really focus on the specificity of the Filipino community and the stories that you want to tell, and how does that specificity really kind of shape the story that you're trying to tell, other than those of a lot of other immigrant stories that we see?
I think. Sorry, I'm hearing myself in the feedback. So I think setting the film in Queens is an opportunity for us to really celebrate our culture and highlight our Filipino immigrant community. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm getting really this. I keep hearing myself.
It's okay.
Cecilia,
Can you? Sure. Yeah, the Filipino community is the third largest immigrant community in the country, and a lot of what you see in the film is still the same experiences that they've had since I can remember, since they started migrating here as teachers and nurses. Even now till this day, I still see
a lot of Filipinos, even in my own family, sending everything that they have back to the Philippines, which is why it's so important for it to stay in the remittance center. Because this is a lot of the time that they spend. They spend so much time there sending money back because that's, as what Clarissa says, their currency for love. And that's a very specific thing to the Filipino community because we talk about that often, that all these OFWs don't really raise their children. They send money back in items, and this is how they show their love.
Yes, Trace.
Hi, beautiful pitch. I was curious as to, so I'm getting an echo too. I was curious
It's weird,
as to
right?
why the open call for Dolores, because there's a lot of, just as a struggling actor myself, I'm wondering, did you look and were you not able to find someone with a few credits to kind of fit that role, or did you just want, like, what was the reasoning behind the open call?
I'm gonna take off my headphones so I don't hear myself. Um, so, Open Call for Dolores and other actors is a way for us to kind of discover what the other artists that haven't had the opportunity yet to work on a project, say, at this level. Um, and we had a wonderful Dolores for our short film. And I'm not saying that she's not going to be our Dolores, but in the writing of the script, the character of Johnny has also evolved. So it's really like a matter of putting Johnny with potential Dolores and see what works. At the end of the day, it's still about chemistry. So, we don't, we're not often seen on screen. So I think it would be amazing if, as a production, we can help we can help bring out more talent, more Filipino and Filipino American talent in the process of making the film itself. So, in a way, the way that Cecilia and I are envisioning the film is that even before we start rolling the camera, that we're already making an impact in many little ways. So that's kind of like why we're envisioning an open call. And it's not just for the role of Dolores, by the way.
Vina.
Hi. So I had a question for you both, and this is a tough one, so just roll with it. Maraming salamat also for this subject matter. It's wonderful. So, and it's true. We need many, many Asian stories in this country, and so the love story. What did you discover? I'm very curious because it's unique world, universal story. When you were shooting your short, were there any discoveries you had between the actors that you want to explore now in the feature version?
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Because, sorry.
I can hear you.
So, in making the short film, you know, in making the short film, for me, I realized even more that what I wanted to tell was not a love story, but a story about love. And so, what the feature allows me to do is kind of like bring to surface all these different kinds of love that exists within this community. So you have Johnny's unrequited love for Dolores. You have Dolores's love for her child, and in a way, you have even one of the supporting characters, Mrs. Ruby's blind love for her husband. So if there is a discovery in making the film, it basically affirmed my desire to tell not just a love story, but a story about love in such a transactional community that needs to be transactional because everyone's trying to keep afloat. So
Sorry. Thank you. This is awkward.
Excellent. Remember, if you love Johnny Loves Dolores, then you can vote for them for the Fan Favorite Award by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you, Clarissa and Cecilia. Our next film is Land of Gold. The film follows Kiran, a first-generation Punjabi trucker and anxious father-to-be, who stumbles across Elena, a 10-year-old undocumented Mexican-American during a cross-country road trip. As Kiran helps Elena find her way home, the unlikely pair connect over a shared history and evolving expectations of what family truly is. Let's hear now from the filmmakers.
Hi everybody, my name is Nardeep Kurmi and I'm the writer and director of Land of Gold. Now my parents, like most immigrants, rarely talk about their journey. You kind of have to pull teeth getting the information out, either through photos or anecdotal experiences from friends or family. But one day, because a girlfriend was visiting, my father gave me some insight about an image he saw from a magazine while he was a medical student in India. An image of rolling hills, luscious grass swaying in the wind, sheep peppering these hilltops as they spilled into the deep blue ocean. It was this image, he said, that spurred his dream of travel, wanting to visit places unknown, completely different than the dusty and farm-filled Punjab that he grew up in. It was this image that pushed him into pursuing his American dream. Land of Gold begins at a roadside truck stop with Kiran, a Punjabi trucker in his 30s holding a little more weight than he should. He's FaceTiming with Preeti, his childhood friend turned wife, at their 32-week sonogram. A bit nervous and not really connecting, Kiran heads back home to Bakersfield, California just in time for their baby shower. But not quite ready for this immense life change, Kiran accepts a last-minute trucking job to Boston without consulting Preeti, which causes a blow-up argument. Admitting she feels abandoned, she gives Kiran a choice. Figure your shit out, or you may not have a home to come back to. Kiran takes a break to stargaze at the Arizona border, and while reflecting on his complicated relationship with his father, he hears a bang, discovering Elena, a 10-year-old Mexican-American stowed away on his trailer. After a frenzied chase in the desert that leaves Elena passed out, Kiran searches her belongings, finding a National Geographic cutout of a lighthouse in Maine. Unsure of what to do, he decides to take her into the police. Elena wakes up, realizes where he's going, and pleads with him to stop, stating she's just heading to that lighthouse to be with her uncle. Feeling something is amiss, Kiran instead takes Elena to a Punjabi diner and motel to get food and rest, while he figures out what the next best course of action is. And after informing Preeti about what's going on, Kiran, still conflicted, decides to take Elena to Maine. As they drive across the changing American landscape, our unlikely pair bond over family history and dreams of the future. Elena admits to being undocumented after a run-in with local police, and Kiran considers how to reconcile with Preeti. Elena opens up about God while at a rest stop called Little Jerusalem, and Kiran, in turn, shares his complicated relationship with Sikhism and God. We see through flashbacks that much of his fear is due to his own father's struggles with substance abuse and a changing post-9/11 society. And after a tense encounter at a convenience store, where Kiran fails to eloquently communicate the realities of being brown in America, he sets up his telescope on the roof of his trailer, sharing his childhood dream of astronomy. Elena reveals she wants to be a singer, then admits that her family was arrested and deported, and her uncle is all she has left. After delivering their payload in Boston, Kiran brings Elena to his brother's house, where he finally confronts his father and brother, allowing old family traumas to begin to heal. Kiran and Elena arrive in Maine and discover a new tenant at her uncle's address. Elena finally breaks down, blaming her own selfishness for her family's deportation. And as they stand side by side at that dilapidated lighthouse from the photo, Kiran promises to care for Elena and reunite her with her family. He then apologizes to Preeti, admitting he doesn't want to make the same mistakes as his father. She tells him that she's made a room for Elena. Just as Kiran, Preeti, and Elena are finding their way, an incident at an ICE checkpoint separates them. And as Elena finds herself again alone, Preeti gives birth, and a new family begins. Kiran and Elena's journey mirrors my own. I'm a child of diaspora who's never really fit in anywhere. I'm neither American enough nor Indian enough, and now my friends are having children, which is making me think about having children, which is scaring me. I want to believe that I will be the support system for them that they need as they discover themselves, and I want to believe that I'll be able to share with them all the things that I love. And I recognize we all have these feelings, it's not just me, but we rarely get to see it from our perspective, and that's why I'm making this movie. Kiran and Elena's relationship also harkens back to a rich American history few people know. The first immigrants to America from India came in the late 1800s, and they were Punjabi farmers. And during the Asian Exclusion Act, facing extreme prejudice, these people formed a tight-knit community with a migrating Mexican population, forming this really beautiful hybrid Mexican-Punjabi community that still exists in the American Southwest. Land of Gold is my homage to that untold history. Now, I know what you're thinking. The script sounds epic, both in theme and scope, but it is an intimate family story at its core. And I've got my family on board to help make it happen.
Hey, I'm Pallavi.
And I'm Kirtana.
And we're the producers of Land of Gold.
I first met Nardeep when I saw his short film Bug a few years ago at a film festival. It was so captivating and I felt so seen, and after, only a 5-minute conversation, I realized that he and I had very similar goals in making grounded diaspora films that explored the human condition.
And I met Nardeep completely separately via mutual friends, and he ended up being my surrogate husband at their wedding weekend.
Right.
And I was 5.5 months pregnant at the time.
Yeah, and understandably impatient. I actually have no idea how you put up with him.
Me neither. But all jokes aside, it was an immediate kinship that I felt with Preeti when I read Land of Gold that made me fall in love.
As a casting director, I'm so excited to do the full search for Elena because she's really the heart of this film. And on the ground in Oklahoma, we have location casting director of Minari, Chris Freihofer, working with us. Plus, we get to fill out the rest of our team with amazing people like Emmy-nominated co-producer Simon Taufik. We've also reached out to the undocumented filmmaker community and hope to form an alliance with them so that we can have an authentic perspective when building Elena's story. I know that from growing up in Texas, the undocumented community was usually talked at and about rather than talked to, and Land of Gold is our chance to do right.
America is also a character in this film, and we wanted to capture the changing landscape as best as possible. So Oklahoma, that has a rich and diverse terrain, allows us to shoot the majority of the film in one state without compromising cinematic quality. From the flatlands of the Panhandle to the New England-esque forest of Tallahena and Punjabi Truck Stop 40 in Sayre that actually inspired the Little Jerusalem section in the script, there are gems everywhere. And the 35% rebate program allows us to utilize the budget to its fullest.
Though our country's complicated politics are in the background, the core of this story is still family, inspired by my own family. Faces, glances, and the moments between dialogue are where this film wants to live. And as a result, cinematography is key. Chris Lowe is our cinematographer, and he's one of my key collaborators. We've known each other for, over 15 years, and we've worked together on almost all of our last projects in the last 10 years. He and I almost have a symbiosis at this point in how we see the world. Embracing our budget, natural light and a roving, lyrical handheld camera, accompanied by 18 to 40mm lensing, will intimately capture the action. Everything will be grounded, earthy, textured, juxtaposing beautiful landscapes with towns that America's forgotten. We're going to want audiences to feel like they're the third passenger on this road trip. To make the script as authentic as possible, I've interviewed Punjabi truckers and undocumented teenagers to understand what their experiences are like, what plans their families have in place in case something happens, and what are their hopes and dreams considering they've got so many limitations put on them due to their status. And like I did with Pallavi and Preeti, I intend to use our lead actress's experiences and personality to infuse and create Elena. I often wonder if immigrants like my father's dreams lived up to their expectations. Our family certainly had its casualties: an emotionally unstable household, substance abuse, anger, a very real erasure of our cultural selves. But we always had each other. Our heroes are first generation, dealing with the accumulation of their family's immigrant experiences, wrestling with how to pass it on to the next generation. It's a story of hope and finding family in the most unexpected of places. About a man learning to be a father and a young woman having to grow up way too fast. My favorite films are those that are specific, in context that you wouldn't expect. This film is complex, lived experience, with infinite entry points for anyone to jump on board. You'll be surprised by how it makes you feel.
What a powerful story. Let's welcome writer and director Nardeep Kurmi and producer Kirtana Sastry for our live Q&A. Welcome Nardeep and Kirtana. Where are you joining us from today?
We are joining from sunny Los Angeles.
Awesome. Are you ready for the judges to ask you a few questions?
Let's
Absolutely.
do it.
I'll jump in.
Thanks.
Good morning. Good morning, guys. Good morning. Talk about more Kieran's conflict. I love how you set him up to be in conflict with the idea of becoming a father because of his own history. But in making the decision to basically caretake this young girl, where is the conflict in that for you?
Yeah. So Kieran is terrified to be a father, much because of his own experiences growing up with his own father, and seeing his father kind of lose his grip on who he was as a man. And I think Kieran taking Elena under his wing is kind of his sort of last ditch effort to prove to himself that he can be the father that he wants to be, and that he can move on from those traumas from his own father, and really raise this child the way he believes he can.
And I bring it up because it reminded me very much of Central Station, if you've seen that film.
Yeah.
The built-in conflict along the way was the joy of this relationship. So looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, it's a road trip movie, so the journey very much informs that. And Elena and Kieran's relationship as it grows, it kind of unfurls the conflict because it's so internal. So as they get to know each other, Kieran actually starts to recognize his own conflict within himself. It's almost like the two of them wind up being each other's therapists in many ways, and letting each other speak to their experiences in a way that they haven't been able to.
Next question from Nisha.
Oh, sorry, I was flipping. I had actually, a similar question to Dana, but I feel like you answered it. And, you know, it's just the thing I really love is that you took the time to go into researching. I mean, it's obviously always a little bit difficult for telling stories that are outside of our culture with Elena. So the Punjabi trucker story, I love that you're not doing the model minority story, that you've got this like incredible landscape of Americana and show the immigrant experience, and that we've been here since, you know, the late 1800s is something that nobody's really captured yet or explained. So I love that you've done that with the Punjabi farmers and truckers story. And obviously addiction in community is important. It's sort of lightly touched on in your treatment, but I'm hoping it'll go a little deeper in the actual movie. And their relationship too is something I would encourage you as you're evolving the script while you're shooting to bring out that conflict more, just to keep the drive going in the narrative. But beautiful pitch.
Thank you. One of the things that we're excited about exploring with the addiction aspect of it is, Kieran watched his father drink and become this shell of himself as he was a kid. So flashbacks peppered throughout the movie will feel like snapshots and memories, and I'm hoping that they will really emotionally bring the audience in to that fear and confusion you have as a kid when you see your parent do this to themselves and not really understand what that is. And then again, that dovetails into Kieran's conflict because he's seeing those things happen in himself, like the irritability, the short temper, and that scares him. And then he's got his own addiction with smoking. Travels through families. It just happens in different ways. And like that those moments where he kind of wants to go to his vice and not. So we're excited to explore that.
And I will say also that the exciting thing when I was reading and while we were developing the script was that some of the other characters, the family members of Kieran, also touch on conversations that they've never really had before until he brings this child, to them and explains what he's doing. So he finally gets to have a vulnerable conversation with his own mother about, how her past with her husband, also how she knows that framed, Kieran's relationship and her past, their past as well. And he's able to have those tough conversations with his brother as well.
Wow. That's a lot. That's awesome. Also, what about the 18 to 40 lens you were saying? Why no longer than 40? And will it be different for the flashbacks?
The 1840 lens will be. Oh, sorry. Yes. The sort of, well, so I guess snapshot might not have been in terms of snapshot. It's more like the coloring and the feel and that sort of a nostalgia aspect to it. We still will be remaining with the sort of wider, tight, intimate lensing though, and I think with the flashbacks, as you saw in some of that sizzle material, we'll really be playing with depth of field and really making it shallow, almost like, are we seeing this the way it was remembered, or am I remembering it differently? And those flashbacks will be really more about like central imagery. So, for example, one is like Kieran remembering holding his little brother in bed while his parents fight. And it's just seeing two little children with, juras under the covers as they just see the light under the door, and really using that sort of like archetypical imagery to set us in his memory. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Remember, if you loved Land of Gold, then you can vote for them for the Fan Favorite Award by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you, Nardeep and Kirtana. What an amazing presentation from 5 dynamic projects. I don't envy the Greenlight Committee right now. So they will go off for the next hour and a half to discuss the projects and determine the $1 million prize recipient. They will come back to the stream to announce the winner at 1 p.m. Some of the things they will discuss include, does the story feel compelling and specific? Is the point of view one that is largely unseen? Is the team driven, motivated, and passionate about telling this story? Do they possess a clear vision for style and execution? Is there a wide-reaching audience for this film? Can you imagine this film premiering at the Tribeca Film Festival in 1 year? Can it be produced for $1 million? In summary, why this story? Why is this the best team to tell this story? And why now? One thing is certain. Untold Stories is a trailblazing program that provides both film and filmmaker with unparalleled support. Programs like this can create rapid and meaningful change in our media landscape. Even more special, this year's Untold Stories event coincides with the 20th anniversary of the Tribeca Film Festival, after a year that's made filmmaking and film going more vital than ever. And one last reminder to vote for your fan favorite to determine who will take home that $50,000 prize. Click the link in the description below to make your selection. Voting will stay open through 12:30 p.m. EST. Thank you all very much for tuning in. I can't wait to hear who the committee decides is the winner this year. Be sure to check back to the stream at 1 p.m. to see the winners. Earlier today, we heard incredible pitches from 5 filmmaking teams, each hoping to win a $1 million prize to make their movie. Our Greenlight Committee has been hard at work selecting who will win the $1 million prize, and we're all at the edge of our seats. But before we announce our winner, I'm thrilled to have with me co-founder of the Tribeca Film Festival, Robert De Niro, and CEO and co-founder of the Tribeca Film Festival, Jane Rosenthal.
Good morning.
Morning. The first Tribeca Film Festival opened less than 8 months after 9/11. We started it because we wanted to bring people back into our neighborhood, and we needed to bring our community together. We're filmmakers, so it made sense to start a film festival.
That was 2002. The upstart Netflix was sending out DVDs through the US Postal Service. YouTube didn't exist. Google wasn't a verb. And Bob, you'd only made 62 films. Since then, technology and artistic innovation have increased opportunities for inventive storytelling. Bob has now made 123 movies. But all kidding aside, our community has grown, our neighborhood is the world, and we have become a truly international film festival.
We didn't do it on our own, and I'm happy today to thank our presenting partner, AT&T, for their unwavering and generous support.
4 years ago, AT&T asked me what they could do to make a real difference to the filmmaking community. I suggested giving a filmmaker $1 million to tell their story and further support them by ensuring that it's seen. They didn't even blink. I probably should have asked for more money. Oh well. That was the beginning of Untold Stories, which thanks to AT&T are now being told. I'm especially excited that the program has continued to grow and to now guarantee distribution through HBO Max. There's no better way for us to launch our 20th anniversary celebration than with a group of emerging filmmakers and Untold Stories.
Now it's our honor to introduce you to a member of the Untold Stories jury, director, writer, producer, storyteller, and I'm proud to add an alumnus of TFI's Tribeca All Access, Nisha Ganatra.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. De Niro. Thank you, Ms. Rosenthal. It's surreal and beautiful to be here at the Tribeca Film Festival. Tribeca gave me the funding to help finish my first film and directly launched my dream of a directing career, so thank you. I know firsthand how financing can change the dream of a filmmaker into a dream career. The stories we heard today were all really moving and important untold stories, and every filmmaker brought their dreams and their personal visions, and the jury agreed on one thing unanimously, which was that we're really confident that each of you will make your dreams come true. So now to announce the winning project is Kellen from AT&T.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Nisha. To start, a huge thank you to the village of people that have been involved in this extraordinary project. And of course, an extra special thanks to Carlton, to Nardeep, to Gabriella, to Tony, and Clarissa. We have actually all been on your side of the table pitching something that we really loved and believed in, and somehow it's always equal parts energizing yet exhausting. And if you haven't done so already, please take a breath and recognize that you're at the table. And that's something to be incredibly proud of. The mission of this program is simple. How do we help take compelling stories from the most unique voices from untold to told? AT&T believes that representation matters. We believe that if you can see it, you can be it, and that's what today is all about. We're a company that connects millions of people every day, whether you're picking up your phone to call your producer, emailing your agents, publicists, assistants, texting your hair and makeup about wigs, casting your lead actor through video conference, or logging on to do late night edits. AT&T knows that connections matter, and you know that you can count on us. We're proud, extraordinarily proud, to be part of this experience, and we're proud to let the voices of diverse filmmakers be told. And with that, on behalf of my fellow jurors, we can announce this year's winner. As you know, the winner will be awarded $1 million to produce a film that will premiere a year from now at the 2022 Tribeca Festival. And for the first time in program history, they will receive distribution on HBO Max. And because all of the stories presented today were so moving and so extraordinary, we're presenting all of our 4 finalists with a great $10,000 grant to help them achieve their film goals. Now, I'm going to read the statement that we in the jury wrote after our deliberations. First, this was an extraordinarily difficult decision, and it was not unanimous. We deliberated literally until the final moments because every one of these stories moved us and deserves to be told. We were all truly honored to hear from you. You exuded passion, and your talent is without question. All of us are leaving here feeling incredibly inspired. Ultimately, it was our responsibility to select a great story that would take audiences on a journey of love and redemption, and that would truly blow them away. In the end, we chose a story that speaks to the human experience that has remained untold for far too long. It marries 2 American stories that we haven't seen before, other than in the news, where that human experience is flattened and stripped, and where the people inside the story don't even feel human. Without further ado, and on behalf of AT&T, Tribeca, and my fellow jury members, I'm honored to announce the winner of the 4th AT&T Presents Untold Stories. And the winner is Land of Gold by Nardeep Cormie. Congratulations. You won!
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, AT&T, Tribeca, HBO, Warner Media for this amazing opportunity. Thank you to the
Amazing Greenlight
the
Committee.
Greenlight Committee.
Thank you so much.
Bryce over at Tribeca. This is
Unreal.
How do you respond to this?
Completely unreal.
This is amazing. We can't wait to make this movie.
And we loved every single pitch, and all of these filmmakers are so brilliant and incredible. So it's an honor to be a part of the conversation at all. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me while we catch our breath.
Is that it?
I don't know.
Wow. Congratulations to Land of Gold. Well deserved. We aren't done just yet. We have to announce the winner of the fan favorite, your pick at home for the film you'd most like to see. And the fan favorite winner is Johnny Loves Dolores. Thank you everyone for watching. Let's all continue to cheer on and support each and every one of these filmmakers along their journeys. And we can't wait to see Land of Gold at Tribeca next year. Goodbye.